Greetings everyone, and welcome to the Planet Ripologues. Today we'll break down Log 7 Disrepair and Log 8 Arrival. After a bit more insight into how merfolk live, which is expanded in the merfolk lore video, we get a couple of my strangest early designs. This futuristic hovercar looks closer to a modern contemporary wheeled one, not a sea creature like most Ripple vehicles do, so it kinda feels like it's breaking a rule. Then there's this outfit, weaved together from sea plants by Noma as a gift to this new character. And it's never really followed up on again. Whatever cultural significance it has to Noma's people, we don't see it. I can still bring it back though. There's always next volume. Naval Commander Anora Higgs is friends with Captain Nate, and she's here to visit a certain cyborg that a certain merfolk told her about. Minnow is waiting for a new pair of legs and has to get by with this chicken walker with a control panel when she's called away, which seems more complicated than bionic limbs. Her first meeting with Anora is the most autistic moment yet, and relatable to more people than I expected. Not just any pirates, but the Barracuda gang no less. That's truly something. It was very brave of you to stand up to them like that. I'm sure Andrea would be— Thank you. It was nice meeting you too. I'll go back to work then. Minnow? Even when Minnow falls and hurts herself, she insists on going back to work. Like Minnow, I tend to regress a bit when really stressed out. Parts of my autism I've learned to mask start showing again. Old habits creep back. The biggest cause of Minnow's recent stress is Puppy's deteriorating health. My favorite chicken may be dying as I record this, so I'm in a similar headspace. Puppy's a fairly old seal, and might just be on his way out. Anora isn't sure what to make of Minnow, but a look at her medical record shows she's an ideal candidate for Anora's Zoot program. We've seen civilian Zoots, but there are also battle Zoots in this world, pirate ones, and they are scary, just hulking metal sea monsters. And Anora's answer to that is a Zoot so light and nimble that it dances circles around the pirates. The catch is, it's not possible to design something that small that fits an entire person inside it. This isn't like Iron Man, where the machine's joints wrap around yours without bending or twisting anything. Now this would tear a human body to pieces. Luckily, Minnow isn't an entire human body. She's just a head and torso. She can sit inside this thing, and then it becomes her arms and legs. But that means it doesn't have any controls, and would be animated by somebody's mind, their brain, like any bionic limb. Only people with a certain mutation can move this much tech without creating health problems. This is where Minnow's DNA comes in. Hers has 4 active strands, while most people have 2 active strands and 2 junk strands, basically filler. This has nothing to do with her autism or her intelligence. It's just another benign Ripple mutation like people born without wisdom teeth or an appendix or pinky toes. This one just makes her slightly easier for Zoot technology to read. Some of the pirates have this condition, and that's how they pilot their Zoots, essentially their bodies. But that kinda makes this a chicken and egg situation. Like, was the discovery of 4-strand people the missing piece that proved this Zoot technology valid? Or was it built to accommodate them? Or exploit them? The closest we have to a mutation like this in our time is 3-strand DNA. There are a couple of individuals born like that now, but it creates so many health complications it isn't something to joke about. Yeah, this whole DNA thing is another volume 1ism that's emphasized less as the series goes on. But it's those 2 qualifiers, someone who's tetraplegic and a 4-strander, that Anora's has such a hard time locating. Seth is against Minnow entering the program, thinking she'll be exploited, and to a degree she will be, despite Anora's assurance to the contrary, even offering new cuffs and cyber kidneys. But Captain Nate insists that Minnow is an adult and should make this decision herself. Meanwhile, Minnow sees something that makes her blood boil. A poster of herself. Many posters. A picture of Minnow deep in thought, taken without her consent while she was in recovery, and used without her consent to guilt other cyborgs. This was inspired by, of all things, a Facebook post I saw years and years ago when I still used Facebook more. It was a photo of this armless little boy with a wheelbarrow behind him, the ropes loosely slung over his shoulder stumps, probably in the Congo, with the overlay, "Tell me why you can't work," stamped over. This is something we see too often. Imagery of poor and disabled people used to put down other poor and or disabled people, as if to say, you better not cry about your disability or ask for food stamps or any help until you've suffered at least as much as this person has. Now I doubt the photographer who captured that image ever imagined it would be used that way. But that's just what some people do. Christina's hired hands, because of course this was her idea, framed this propaganda as Christina turning a leaf, trying to make things up to Minnow by showing everyone how amazing she is. But Minnow ain't having it. She's been to rock bottom. She's been at the receiving end of that treatment and rhetoric at the hands of people like Christina. And it sucks. And Minnow can't stay on the Bellina any longer. Maybe Anora can help with that. And when she visits Minnow and looks Puppy over, saying she can fix him up too on her ship? I can guess why you're here. You came to see me because you need someone like me to take part in a project of yours, right? Somebody who isn't afraid of losing an arm or a leg? I saw that coming immediately when they introduced us. Why else would I be called from work to meet a naval commander? I'm not as stupid as everyone thinks I am, even the well-meaning ones. I hear the way people talk about me. Something big like this, they say, oh, she shouldn't have to make a decision like that on her own. Someone like her, she could so easily be taken advantage of. And I am so sick of being spoken of like I'm 5 years old. I may not understand everything, but I've had a lot of time to think about where I want my life to go lately, and whatever I'm looking for, it isn't here. Not anymore. I was hesitant to hear you out earlier, but the way things are going, this place is gonna kill me. Him too. I guess I've been waiting for an excuse to leave. Yeah, Minnow's ready to go, but not before making one last stop at Andrea's old apartment where Minnow used to live. And she has one final confrontation with Christina. This scene was actually a pretty late addition. Originally, I meant for the first 2 Planet Ripple books to be one big book, a 300-page monster. But that would be $50 for a paperback at the time, $60 now. And that price tag would scare anybody away, no matter how much they'd like the story. So I found a good enough place to split it down the middle, the first half focusing on Minnow's destitute pre-Navy days, and the second on her early Navy ensign days. But that would end Volume 1 kind of abruptly, and I realized one last scene with Christina would give it some closure, an emotional climax at least. And it is an important moment, but my god is it wordy. If I wrote this same scene today, I could easily trim this dialogue down to half, maybe a third. That would take up just as much space on the page because the text would be big enough to read. Minnow rambles for an eternity and Christina just stands there and takes it. On the other hand, some readers have told me it's actually pretty realistic for Minnow to be so rambly, especially at this point in her autistic development. So give or take. Christina is grateful to Minnow for going out to rescue Kelsey and the others Hack took, but Minnow makes it clear that she is not doing this for Christina. She's doing this for herself. Maybe someday they could have some kind of peace, but right now she just needs to be away. And off she goes to the Pristidae, the first Navy ship we see in the series. It's a lot smaller than the Bellina. If anything, I made this hangar way too big. Minnow saves the one remaining arm from the set Andrea gave her, as a keepsake, but the other limbs she's used throughout this book? Dead weight, goodbye. Minnow gets her new limbs and kidneys, and this is a pretty big jump in her quality of life. It's still not ideal. These cuffs and limbs are a flawed design, and later limbs will be more comfortable. But compared to the discomfort she's experienced for years, it's a start. These limbs are lighter, more flexible, she won't need as much vitae as before, and they're just dang prettier. As pretty as I could make them at the time. We'll see her go through several sets of new improved limb designs, just you wait. And here it is, her special Zoot, and it is clunky. Real squarish and boxy, not quite hydrodynamic yet. It's a prototype. This too will be redesigned many times during Minnow's journey. Cutting back to Hack and Kelsey, Volume 1's final chapter, Arrival, may be too short to make its own video, so I'm just gonna cover it here. If Volumes 1 and 2 were still one book, I could see this happening at the end of the second half, but I didn't want to keep people waiting to meet the Pirate Queen and her flagship we've heard so much about. Besides, it would add a couple of months to Kelsey's wait for his new home. He wonders which ship it is as they all gather in a circle. But this thing's in a league of its own, boiling the water as its fins cut through low-hanging clouds. The ship itself, Doch Kiefer, is literally a giant metal barracuda. It took me a while to settle on the thing's size, but it's at least 7 kilometers long. You know that dreadnought Star Destroyer from The Last Jedi? The flat one, like a pizza slice that's bigger than other First Order Star Destroyers, which are themselves twice as long as Imperial Star Destroyers? Yeah, Kiefer's as long as that, but its roundest shape and internal volume actually make it much bigger. It's so huge that smaller ships use its mouth as a port. My solution for how this thing doesn't break apart when it moves? The outer layers, at least, are a train. Each of those segments from one end to the other can sway a little, giving it a flexibility smaller ships don't have, and making it all the more lifelike. And inside, it's a whole nation. They need trains just to get around, and the Queen's presence is felt immediately, especially with signs like these. I've kept people waiting long enough. Meet Barracuda, the pirate queen. She doesn't say a word in this book, but you can see what she's all about. Even with the attire and the scars, she lacks a certain classic pirate touch. She's still complete. No peg leg, no claw hand, no glass eye. She isn't augmented like her soldiers, and she takes pride in that, in not being disabled, at least not visibly. Her pug is an obvious piratey disability though. He, ran face first into a wall and his eye fell out. This sort of thing actually happens a lot to real pugs. Their eye sockets are so shallow and their eyes bulge out so far already, it doesn't take much for them to have an accident. But every pirate lord needs an animal buddy, and a small dog seemed oddly perfect for Barracuda. Though given how pugs have only been around a few hundred years, and changed so much in just the last 100 or so, it's far-fetched that such a specialized dog breed would survive 30,000 years into the future. They could have just as easily been wiped out by the flood only for humans to accidentally re-evolve pugs by independently seeking to breed the same traits. Funny how things work out. And that's it for Volume 1. 150 pages of heartache, struggle, and cautious optimism. With this story, with Minnow, I wanted to humanize autistic people, not fetishize our quirks that make us so alien to A-listics. I wanted to show us going through survivor's guilt, PTSD, depression, anxiety, mood swings, all of it, just through the extrasensory filter of autism. I want Minnow to be a picture of our humanity at its most raw. And if I only had one book to do it, I'm happy with the picture I painted. The book ends with Barracuda, plus a Volume 2 teaser with Minnow, and a poorly written autobiography. Yeah, we don't need to see that. You may have noticed a lot of growing pains with these early chapters, some story related, but mostly formatting stuff. It was my first release, and it was almost a decade ago, but I don't feel that's a good excuse. And while Volume 2, developed at the same time as Volume 1 and even released on the same day, does share a lot of Volume 1's issues, the series steeply improves from there, and I continue to raise the bar with every new entry, writing and art-wise. I may be my own worst critic though. Time and again over the years, people I respect and would have expected to tear into this, and who do acknowledge its roughness around the edges, have consistently been hooked by Ripple's uncompromising rawness. Before they see anything else, this book that's mostly set up for the real action to come continues to win people over, makes them fall in love with Minnow, and I can't help being proud of that staying power. But about those later books. When I launched my Patreon page in 2021, I said I'd cover the first book publicly, and then the rest of these recap videos would be patron exclusive. And it only took 3 years to get here. I'd planned to focus on lore dump videos like the first few I've done. But as dense as Ripple's world building is, even in just this first book, I enjoy this video format more and will mostly focus on it. So that leaves me with the problem of only LEGO content being visible on my channel going forward. At that point, why call it Nick on Planet Ripple? I should rename the channel Nick's Bricks or go back to being Nick on Aqua Magna. Also, Volume 2 was released in 2017. People in my audience have had plenty of time to get ahead of these videos and avoid spoilers, especially at the speed these videos are trickling out. But I want to be more consistent, and even if I start churning these out more rapidly now, it'll take years to catch up to recent chapters, especially as I whip up a new book every year. So yeah, I'm thinking of changing things and covering Volume 2, 3, and so on publicly, though patrons would still get them early, maybe a month early. I don't know, what do you think? Would you peeps, patrons or no, feel betrayed if I covered more of my series on my channel? Made it a bigger focus than it has been? I feel I should at least run it by before committing. So do leave some feedback on how these have shaped up so far and if you want more. That's it for today. Check out my books on Amazon and itch.io, and my Patreon page where you get videos like this early, your name in the credits, behind the scenes content, a patron Discord server, signed copies of Planet Ripple, and maybe even your own LEGO Rewind episode. See you next time on the Planet Ripple Logs. Toodles!